You know, now that Doors has recently updated and the game is somewhat back in the spotlight, I want to take this video to not talk about the update at all and reflect on a rather interesting character found in the game instead. Well, I use the word found very loosely there, as this character isn't actually even in the game, but at the same time they kind of are. It's very confusing, and that's part of why this mysterious character is so interesting. In fact, this one Doors character is so mysterious and secretive that they are one of the only pieces of the entire game which the public can physically not get their hands on, meaning retrieving their assets is near impossible, unlike every other entity, object, or item in the game. Today, I want to go over everything we know about Doors' most mysterious character, that being Doors Man. Yes, that's its name. What makes them so odd, and why they are impossible for us to ever fully grasp. We have got a lot of rather interesting stuff to go over today, so with all of that being said, let's begin. Alright, so I wouldn't be surprised at all if you knew that this Doors main character existed, but I would actually be surprised if you knew their entire backstory. Essentially, Doors Man is a human character who takes the role of the player in almost every single Doors update trailer. Whenever a new trailer releases, there's a good chance you'll actually see this guy acting as, well, you, as if you were playing the update yourself. Also, yes, Doors Man is their official canon name. It's not just a placeholder I'm using because I don't actually know their real name, they're literally called Doors Man. Anyways, visually, this Doors Man character appears to be a Caucasian male wearing a plaid shirt, blue jeans, a red beanie, a bracelet, and a gold cross necklace. Now, it's important to note that across all the trailers, the character's design has changed, most notably since the release of the Outdoors update. This will be something that is incredibly important to this video later on, but let's go over the differences between the new and old designs for Doors Man. Now, both designs are pretty much the same, except the new one has a couple key differences. For one, the old design was just a normal Roblox avatar that anyone could replicate, whereas the new one utilizes completely unique custom models that only the Doors developers have access to. A lot of these models are actually being sold as UGC by those same developers, so you can dress up as Doors Man if you want. However, some of the character's design characteristics, such as their fully modeled boots, are impossible for players to replicate. Now, like I said previously, Doors Man's entire purpose is to act as the player character in all of the Doors trailers, and this is very interesting because they're the third player character design in the whole game. Essentially, across all of Doors media, the player themselves is represented as one of three distinct character models. The first is obviously Doors Man, as we have previously discussed, but the other two are drastically different from this Doors Man character. You see, in the game's UI and badge icons, the player is typically represented by a completely colorless and featureless human. This is the second design the player is represented by in-game, and it is pretty common for many games to do, as the player is technically meant to be whatever your avatar looks like. They are you, after all. So having a general blank canvas humanoid representing every single player as a whole makes sense from a design perspective. The third player character design in Doors is the yellow I Heart Doors character. This avatar is what displays on players who don't properly load into the game, and it depicts a humanoid with yellow skin wearing a shirt that says I Heart Doors, alongside an image of a knockoff Rush plushie. Given the nature of this avatar and how it's mostly just meant to be a silly joke, I doubt it has any canon relevance to the Doors story. So that means the player character is most officially represented as Doors Man, or the completely blank avatar. Anyways, yap aside, what this means is that if you look at it from a story perspective, Doors Man is what your player character canonically is, at least if you ignore how your own avatar is technically how the player is meant to look. This doesn't really hold any lore significance though, even though I'm kind of making it out to be, as the design of your player character is never brought up, but still it is a neat little piece of trivia. What this does mean though is that everything we know about the player also applies to Doors Man. So for example, they also have glitch residing inside of their head creating visions for them. Now although that's cool and all, the most interesting part about Doors Man by far is how they are virtually the only officially added piece of Doors media that is impossible for us to ever get our hands on. Now, you might be confused on what I even mean by that, so let me explain. However, in order to do that, we have to get onto the more technical side of Doors and Roblox as a whole, so strap in for a completely random discussion. Essentially, any Roblox game, including Doors, is able to be data mined by a special type of exploiter called, you guessed it, a data miner. What this means is that exploiters can just go into the game, grab any asset such as an entity or an object, save the file of that asset and use it anywhere, such as in another Roblox game. This data mining stuff is typically viewed as bad by a large portion of the community, but in most cases it's pretty harmless and I'm actually a fan of it. In fact, the entity renders on the Doors wiki were all made possible because data miners gave the entity models to render makers to photograph them, such as myself. Now, the only way data mining these assets is possible is if the assets are present inside of the public Doors game. This makes it so anything we see inside of Doors is available to be retrieved by data miners, and mostly everything in the game has been retrieved by data miners already throughout the years. That is, except the model of Doorsman, and the reason for that is actually pretty simple. You see, although this character is the face of all the trailers, they do not appear inside of the Doors game a single time. Nobody will ever see Doorsman in the game they are from, and that means they are impossible for data miners to claim for themselves, meaning stuff like proper renders can't ever be created for them. Doorsman is, to my knowledge, the only piece of recurring Doors media, besides stuff like scrapped content, that has this unique property of never being retrievable, and it makes thoroughly documenting them pretty difficult, as we can't ever really get a good look at the character's entire custom model, as we only get what we see in trailers. This is why I believe Doorsman is one of the most mysterious Doors characters. Not because their lore is that hard to decipher or anything like that, but because we can never truly obtain them, which is a characteristic unique to only this one person. Anyways, like I briefly mentioned in the intro, I know this video had absolutely nothing to do with the new update, and I think that's okay, but I just thought it would have been cool to talk about probably one of the most interesting and most obscure characters in the entire Doors franchise. I'm sure we will see a lot more of Doorsman in future update trailers when they eventually do release. And who knows, maybe they could make an in-game appearance someday, somehow. Anyways, with all of that being said, let me know down in the comments what you think of Doorsman, as well as if there was anything I missed regarding them in this video all about them. Also, let me know if you think we will one day be able to retrieve their model to make renders out of it or something. I'm not entirely sure how Doorsman could be implemented into the actual Doors game given how they are you the player character, but it is definitely an interesting thought. Anyways, thank you all for watching and I hope you enjoyed.